The message came in the middle of the afternoon. Quick dinner tonight. Just family. That was all my mom wrote. No context, no follow-up. It wasn't unusual for her to keep things vague. What felt unusual was that she'd reached out at all. I stared at the message longer than I needed to, trying to decide what version of family this would be. The one where I was included, or the one where I was technically present, but not quite part of it. I went anyway. The restaurant wasn't the kind of place we usually went to. It had low lighting, polished surfaces, the kind of quiet that makes people speak softer than they need to. When I stepped inside, I saw them immediately. A long table near the front, already full laughter, glasses raised, familiar but distant. My mom noticed me first. She stood halfway, not fully getting up, and gave a small wave like I'd arrived late to something casual. "You're here," she said, then glanced behind me as if expecting someone else. I walked closer. My dad nodded once, already mid-conversation with someone seated beside him. My sister didn't look up at all. For a second, I thought maybe they'd make space. They didn't. My mom gestured vaguely toward the back of the restaurant. "You can sit there," she said. We needed space for the real group. It was said lightly, almost as if it were a joke that didn't quite land. No one corrected it. I followed her gesture. There was a smaller table near the back wall, partially tucked behind a column. Not hidden exactly, just separate enough. I stood there for a moment before sitting down. The chair felt colder than it should have. From where I was, I could still see them. My dad leaning forward, engaged. My mom laughing a little louder than usual. My sister scrolling through her phone between conversations, occasionally smiling at something someone else said. No one looked back. A server came by and asked what I wanted. I ordered a drink, nothing complicated. Just something to occupy my hands. As I sat there, the distance between the tables started to feel less physical and more defined. Like a boundary that had always been there. It's not this visible. I thought about leaving. It would have been easy, quiet, no scene, no explanation. But something held me there. Not anger, not even sadness, exactly, clarity. Maybe. I watched the rhythm of their table, orders being taken, dishes arriving, the way the server checked on them more frequently than on me. Not intentionally, just by design. Bigger table, bigger attention. I finished my drink slowly. When the server returned, I handed over my card. "Just for this," I said. They nodded then. After a brief pause, I added something else, calmly. Without lowering my voice or raising it, they hesitated for a second, then gave a small, professional nod. I thanked them and stood up. Instead of heading toward the door, I walked past the host's stand. I stopped, spoke quietly, clarified what needed to be clarified. No emotion in it, just logistics. The host listened carefully, checked something on their screen, then confirmed with a polite, neutral tone. Nothing dramatic. I stepped outside after that. The air felt different. Not better, just less enclosed. I didn't go far, just stood across the street, where I could still see through the large front windows. The table was visible from there, framed by warm light and movement. They were still eating, still laughing, still unaware. Time passed in a way that didn't feel slow or fast, just steady. Then I saw it shift. It started small, the server approaching with the bill. My dad reaching for it without much thought. That part was predictable. What wasn't predictable was how quickly his posture changed. He leaned back slightly, then forward again, like he'd misread something. My mom tilted her head, trying to see. My sister finally looked up. Even from across the street, I could tell something had broken the rhythm. My dad said something. I couldn't hear it, but I could read the shape of it. Confusion first, then sharper. The server remained composed. They spoke in that same neutral tone I'd heard earlier. No apology, no defensiveness, just explanation. My dad's voice rose enough that it carried faintly through the glass. "Why is it over $700? Heads turned at nearby tables. Not dramatically, just enough. The server responded again, pointing slightly, likely referencing the details. My mom's expression tightened, not angry, more like she was trying to reorganize the situation into something that made sense. It didn't. The attention around them shifted subtly. Other diners pretending not to look, but looking anyway. The kind of attention that isn't loud, but unmistakable. For a moment, my dad scanned the room. Then his eyes landed on the empty space where I had been. He stood up, not fully, just enough to look around, as if I might still be somewhere nearby. I didn't move. I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't part of that moment anymore. The server remained steady, explaining what needed to be explained. The system, the billing, the table designation, no judgment, just process. That was the part that made it final. There wasn't anything to argue against, no misunderstanding to correct. Just a structure they hadn't considered. My dad sat back down slowly. The energy at the table changed. Conversations stopped. Movements became smaller, more contained. My sister folded her arms. My mom looked down at the tablecloth, smoothing it unnecessarily. No one laughed. I stayed there a little longer, watching the aftermath settle into something quieter, heavier. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't check my phone that night, not out of avoidance, just because I already knew what it would be. The next day, there were messages, short at first, then longer, then more spaced out questions, then explanations. None of them asked what I felt, only what happened. I didn't respond immediately. When I finally did, it wasn't detailed. I understood the arrangement, that was all. Days passed. The messages slowed. The tone shifted from confusion to something closer to distance, not resolved, just adjusted. I thought about that night more than I expected to. Not the bill, not the moment itself, but the clarity it created. It wasn't about being excluded from a table. It was about understanding that I had been placed somewhere long before that evening. That the distance had always existed. It had just been easier to ignore when it wasn't visible. Now it was. And once something like that becomes clear, it doesn't really go back. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel guilty either. Just settled, like something had finally aligned with what had always been there, waiting to be seen.